US President Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping held critical talks today in a virtual summit amid rising tensions between the two countries on several fronts. Taiwan and human rights violations by China are Biden's top focus. On Taiwan, President Biden struck a balancing act, on one hand saying that the US maintains its long-standing policy of recognizing the One China policy guided by the Taiwan Relations Act. But the president also warned that the US opposes any unilateral efforts to change the status quo of Taiwan. Chinese state media reported that President Xi warned that US support for Taiwanese independence is like playing with fire, and further said that some people in the US intend to use Taiwan to control China. President Biden also brought up concerns against human rights violations by China in regions like Xinjiang, Tibet and Hong Kong, and discussed the importance of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. President Biden was also clear on the need to protect American industries from China's unfair trade and economic practices. Climate change was also brought up, and the two leaders spoke about the importance of addressing the global energy supply crisis. Earlier in the day, in his opening remarks, President Biden called for candid discussions and said that the two countries need to establish some common sense guardrails in order to prevent conflict.
I'm happy we had found time to meet, and I look forward to a candid and forthright discussion.
All right, so we will be talking about this in a short while. And for more on this story, Richard Kimber is joining us live from Hong Kong, and Stephen Golub, an international affairs expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us at this hour. The much-awaited virtual summit is underway. The two leaders have set out agenda to be outlined by both President Biden and Xi Jinping. What are the major takeaways of this meeting among the world's two biggest economies, Richard?
Well, it certainly seems to have been a fairly cordial meeting in tone, but the problem, many analysts say, is what are the key takeaways? And at the moment, the laundry list of takeaways seems to be relatively short. The only concrete step that's been taken by the Chinese side is to make it easier for US executives to get fast-track visas into China. Apart from that, many of the bigger outstanding issues still seem to be unresolved. There's many questions outstanding about the future of trade talks between the two countries, also about issues of financial transparency with regards to Chinese companies listed in the US. This is a major concern for Chinese companies looking to expand their global footprint. So many extending issues also on human rights still under discussion, and not yet been really concrete evidence of any formal resolution on those fronts. The President Xi Jinping warning President Biden that should Taiwan's separatist forces, as he called them, cross the red line, drastic measures will have to be taken, ignoring the warnings from the US that the US is still standing by Taiwan with regards to China's military assertiveness. So from analysts' point of view here, they say it's good to see the two presidents talking again, but there's still no concrete evidence of any agreement being made after this lengthy discussion.
Stephen, Taiwan remains to be a major sticking point for both US and China. What will be the presumable outcome on that front? Even though Biden called for candid discussions, is China likely to give in to some sort of dialogue?
Well, it may agree to dialogue, but I think the outcome, both in the short term and the longer term, at best will be to agree to disagree. China asserts that that Taiwan is part of China, and that it has, in effect, the right to take Taiwan back, although it would be disastrous if it moved in that direction. So I think you're not going to see an agreement between the two sides in any formal sense, and the best we can see might be that tensions die down a little bit by virtue of ongoing dialogue, perhaps the cooperation in other areas, be they economic or environmental or whatever.
Richard, coming back to you, what is the eventual impact of this meeting between America and China, not just on mending relations, but also on the regional front?
Well, certainly regionally, President Xi Jinping told President Biden that he sees the two countries as like two giant ships sailing across the ocean, both of which have to reach their destination and neither of which should collide during the course of their journey. He's trying to frame this, as he said in one of his other quotes listed in Chinese state media, that there is enough space in the world for both superpowers. There's no need for them to compete when they can both do very well if they just cooperate a little more. So on the regional front, there is some hope that, as your fellow contributor there said, there may be some level of de-escalation of some of the frustrations that have arisen with regards to Taiwan, also with regards, of course, to here in Hong Kong and perhaps also in the northwest of China in Xinjiang, all of which has faced a great deal of US criticism with regards to Chinese political policy. So what we might expect instead, analysts say, is a move towards trying to restart those endless trade negotiations that finally reached an interim trade deal last year, but there's still many unresolved issues surrounding those. So perhaps the economic relationship between the two countries might become the focus over the coming months, rather than any of these continued political arguments that, as your guest there said, may yet still be unresolved.
Even the same question to you. What is the eventual impact of this meeting between America and China, not just on mending relations, but also on regional fronts?
Well, it's always, as I said, it's always good to be talking. This could lead to further dialogue on some more specific issues that may get resolved or at least ameliorated. One other matter I did want to flag, though, that does affect U.S.-Chinese and, for that matter, Chinese-Indian relations going forward are the severe internal governance changes that have taken place in China under Xi, by which I mean, while China was never a democracy, it always had a system of orderly transitions of power, so no one person or group would stay in power for indefinitely. Xi has torn that apart in solidifying his control of the country. At the same time, he's taking some steps to solidify control over the economy, over private enterprise that could actually be counterproductive for China in terms of the economic growth, which has been the basis of a certain amount of stability there. If by virtue of his solidifying his control and perhaps being less consensual in his approach, or a downturn in the economy, the Chinese economy, due perhaps partly to changes he's bringing about, he then needs to assert other ways of being more popular or becoming more or retaining popularity among the Chinese populace. Then saber rattling is one way to go, and that could be a very dangerous way to go. I'm not saying that's going to happen in the short term, but by virtue of Xi solidifying control, wiping out some opposition or excluding some opposition within the party, this is not a good trend for long-term stability and India-Chinese relations or US-China relations for that matter.
Richard Kimber and Stephen Golub, thank you very much for your insights on WION.